like to call to order the meeting of the Vallecitos Water District for Wednesday, March 18th, 2015. And we'll start with a pledge of allegiance led by Tom Caglioni.
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Director Ellisar?
Here.
Director Hernandez?
Here.
Director Martin?
Here.
Director Snella?
Here.
Director Evans?
Here.
Thank you.
If there are no additions to the agenda, then we need a motion for approval and second.
So moved.
Adopt.
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? It passes unanimously. Now, the presentations.
Yes, if you would come down to the podium, please. Cliff, if you'd like to come up, and please bring your children with you if you wouldn't mind. We're all here today, and I'm glad everybody could make it. Cliff is retiring from the Water District. He started with us in 2001 as the Meter Service Worker 1. And in 2003, he went to Level 2. During his time working for the district, he became certified as a backflow prevention tester, plus also a cross-connection control specialist. Those are some of the duties that he's done. He's been with us for 13 years, and what I can say is good guy. I'll leave it at that.
Chris, I do
Strongly missed.
have the privilege of working with you. I've heard nothing, our board has heard nothing but wonderful things about you, that you were always there. You took time out when anybody needed you. You were wonderful and hard worker. We're really going to miss you. You've left a beautiful legacy behind. And we have this certificate. This isn't.
No, wrong one. It's over. It's over there to the right. But you know what? What the hell?
Now, grade D
Go out on top.
Well, one thing I can say is Cliff had a great memory, and we can kind of refer to him as our meter GIS. He always knew where every meter was. So if nobody else could find it, Cliff could actually go out and find it.
find mine.
Dennis, how about 3 weeks after when I got out of the hospital, one of the guys on duty called me because he couldn't find a meter.
Yep.
After a series of strokes, I was still able to guide him.
That's what I say. He's got a great memory, and he's always been there for everybody, as Director Evans said. Always willing to help, whether it was morning, noon, or night. We could call, and Cliff would come in and help. So he's always there for us.
Do that. Why do you have
And
to?
just because they're retiring me doesn't mean you get rid of me today. I think. Wow.
And we're gonna hide this in different meters?
I can test my memory.
So, I don't know the photo, how do you wanna do the photo? There we go. One, two, three. Thank you. I have another.
Yeah, we have another one. Where's Joey? There he is. Joey joined the district in 2005 in the construction department, and in 2008 he was transferred into the water operations department, where he was promoted to the level 2 in 2009. Today, what we're presenting Joey with is an operator, is a grade 5 certification issued by the state, and that is the highest level of certification that you can obtain in the water industry.
Well, I didn't know who Brian was. But before I give this to you, I just want to say, since we have this well-educated, well-trained, and progressive, proactive staff. That's me, what the district's really all about, and I'm very proud of you and the of our administration for being willing to support you in the effort to be the best of the best. So I am very proud to give you this D5. I don't know what it means. But the fact that it comes with the gold seal. And does this make everyone in your operations?
Not yet. but we're all
Almost?
working on it.
Fantastic. I'm so proud of all of you.
And before everybody leaves, talking about not knowing him by his nickname, there used to be a guy named Brucey who worked here years ago. So some of you might remember Brucey. Well, we all got a Christmas card one year from a guy named Robert Crenshaw from Texas. Nobody had a clue who Robert Crenshaw was. And so we all came back to work after Christmas break, and we're all comparing notes. None of us had a clue who the card from. It was from Bruce. And he was visiting his family in Texas, but nobody knew his name was Bruce. So we all had Christmas cards, but nobody had a clue who it was from. So it's pretty funny. Well, thank you all for coming. You can stick around if you'd like.
Some exciting stuff coming up.
And thank you, Cliff.
Okay, we'll take a pause for the
I thought we were
exit.
serving food.
Oh, they'd stay if there was food.
I know. How cool.
Yeah.
You gotta get choked up like that. Didn't think I'd get choked up like that.
Yeah. Surprised me.
Yeah, not in my nature.
James, you do not get to leave. I know he was. Okay, next is oral communications. Do we have any? We have none. Okay, and consent calendar. So I need a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar unless someone needs an item pulled to go to action.
Move to approve the consent calendar?
Thank you, Director Hernandez.
I'll second it, but I did have a question on the warrants list.
Thank you. A second by Sinella. And you have a question on the warrant list?
Yeah, I noticed our membership fee for the San Diego North EDC, it seems that 100% of it came out on the warrants list. Were we not going to do half of it now and then half of it later? Or is it just better for you guys to do it up front and then we'll figure it out later?
I think there was just a lot of overall confusion on what got paid and when.
Okay.
The amount at the level that the board joined in is $10,000. But what it is $5,000 is just theirs.
Yep.
And then you have a $5,000 credit over there is what you have.
Okay.
So if you do the
The water symposium?
water symposium, thank you. Let's say it costs $2,500. Okay, now you've got $2,500 left. If you choose to sponsor a table for $15, then you've got $1,000 left, vice versa.
Okay.
So what you have is a credit account over there ready for you to spend.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes unanimously. Moving on to the action items. No, sorry, public hearing.
Public hearing?
Got that. Let me get my little cheat sheet out here so I know what I'm doing. This is my first public hearing. Okay, this is the time and place for a hearing to consider an increase in board member per diem compensation. And General Manager Lamb, will you please provide the details?
Yes, ma'am. The memo is actually on page 28 of your packet, item 2.1. Just some background on this is the hearing is here for the purpose of receiving any public input on the proposed increase that board member per diem compensation. You may recall the board considered an increase in the per diem at the February 18th board meeting, and the motion was made to consider approving an ordinance modifying it from $150 to $200 per diem, per meeting, the per diem amount. To accommodate that, we did have to provide 2 notices to the public over a 14-day period. They were provided on March 5th and March 12th in accordance with the governing law. The last increase that this board did have, where they modified the per diem, was actually in the year 2000 by ordinance number 125. That was actually also the first year that the current ordinance that the board looks at, which is the business of the board. That was the first year after that that they rolled it into one comprehensive package. But it went from $100 to $150 between 1999 and 2000. So that was the last time it was increased. The board is allowed to make a amendment to the per diem back to what they call the last operative date. The last operative date is the last time that the board took action to change it, which would have been in the year 2000. And what the Water Code government section allows you is up to 5% per year. That's the maximum since the last time it was changed. So it's been 15 years, so technically you could raise it 75%. It actually compounds, so it's a little bit more than that. In the February 18th staff report that was provided to the board, there were two comparisons. One was the cost of living allowance that was provided to employees compared to the 5% that is allowed by the law. The board's direction was to move forward with this public hearing with consideration of an ordinance increasing it from $150 to $200 per diem. The total financial impact, and this is worst case, assuming 10 meetings per month per board member, it would result in a potential increase in the operating budget of $30,000. Again, that is the absolute, meaning everybody went to everything 10 times a month. So that's the worst case. I don't see that happening. If the board were to consider and approve the ordinance today, it would not take effect for 60 days. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Does any member of the board of directors have any questions for staff? No? Does any member of the public wish to address the board? I guess not.
Yes.
You have a hand.
Oh, I'm so sorry, I couldn't see.
You might not be able to see over there.
Oh.
This is the first time I'm coming to me, and I was just wondering.
Could you please come up to the mic? Thank you.
Yeah. And state your name.
Patrice Promack, I'm just wondering, what are the means of public notification that Dennis Lamb referred to?
It was put in the local newspaper, the local Union Tribune, and it was posted in the public notice section on, I've got it here somewhere, March 5th and March 12th.
Okay, so those of us who don't read the UT, is there any other way that we might have been notified? Probably not.
No.
Mm. Okay, so are all notifications then that are public notifications done in that manner?
We have the
From the
legal
board.
requirement that it goes in the local newspaper, so we do advertise to the Union Tribune and also the paper in Escondido that serves the paper.
Okay, so if we don't get the paper, which a lot of people don't, and I don't, do you happen to know, is there a section that you can access through their online version that includes those public notices?
The Union Tribune does have an online e-edition that is, if you're, normally it's subscribers.
So if you're not a
You know,
subscriber, you can't get it?
It's probably hit and miss, I don't, yeah.
Okay, just seems like there might be some possible improved method. I don't have a suggestion for that because I don't think I'm alone in not reading or either the paper itself or the online version. So I certainly didn't receive notification, so.
It's to further, it is also, as part of the board packet, it's posted in the library, it's posted out front, and it's also posted on our website. So it would be part of the agenda in that packet as well, as far as the actual hearing today and everything else.
Okay, so this agenda is also available on your website?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thanks.
You bet. Thank you.
Do you have that website? Do you have the website?
It's VWD, is it?
Yes,
Yes.
vwd.org.
.org. Okay, I'll be sure.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Do we, quick question. Don't we also advertise all of our, don't we also air all of our meetings
Yes,
on television?
yes.
And it's posted?
I also don't have
Good for you.
Yeah, Director Martin is correct.
I don't know how else to get it to people.
We do in our in our monthly or quarterly newsletter, we show the TV channels. Obviously, that wouldn't work for you, but it is the website. You can also the YouTube. Our board meetings are posted on YouTube, so you can check there. The library does have a copy of the agenda. We post it at City Hall. We post it out front, and then it goes to the newspapers as well. But the actual legal notice would go in those two newspapers.
There being no other persons wishing to address the board, the hearing is closed. Does any member of the board of directors have any further questions or discussions to make?
I think we talked about it quite a bit the last meeting.
I would
don't
just-
have anything new to add.
Nothing new?
No, nothing new?
I would like to just say that I think 15 years is a long time to go without a per diem increase. And I commend the boards today and prior who chose to decline it even though they were allowed to seek one. So I think it's important that we go ahead and do have an increase, but for me, I feel that $200 is more than I can support. I'd have been comfortable at 175 or 180, so I will not be able to support this personally. And that closes the public hearing?
Yes. And the next item, if the board is so entertained, and I would like to point your direction to, there was one other modification made on page 34.
Page 34.
If you may recall, a month ago, the board directed staff to also modify the component where the members of the board, section 2.5, are eligible for the same benefits as the employees. That's a true statement, but there are benefits that you are precluded from having by law. So I was directed to include that statement, so we just put in there allowable by law, just to make sure that it's clear and understood, so,
What, you don't get the rubber boots?
nope. I'll give you a hard hat.
Or hard hat?
And then the other provisions, you can see that are redlined in there is where we added that the board can consider on an annual basis up to 5%, or the San Diego CPI, whatever the board chooses. If you do that, you have to go through this public notice, public hearing,
Right.
60-day wait period every time.
Or we can wait another 15 years.
Or you can wait another 15 years. Absolutely.
The allowable by law, where would we go to review that law to see what items may be included?
Are
'Cause
precluded.
I mean, I know we spend a lot of time with our MOU, and it does,
You're not allowed to have PERS.
no, I don't want per.
That's
what it
it.
Is that it?
That's it.
Well, okay, then let me ask the other question. The one that I've heard a number of times, I'm not particularly interested in it, but it does capture at least my ear relative to education. By that I mean courses that are offered by the various college and university, purchase of equipment, and I was only kidding about the boots. But are those applicable?
I'd have to defer to council.
So you're talking about having the district pay for an education? for
We
board
have,
members?
as a part of our MOU, I believe, with the staff, justifiably so.
Right,
If they
right.
want to increase their education, and if they meet the criteria, there's a criteria from memory.
Never ran into it before.
Well,
Have to go back and look at it.
and
Okay.
also the equipment, if I wanted to purchase a computer, I understand the staff has an opportunity, they can do that on a payback period out of their wages. If you could check that as well.
Yeah,
You bet.
Yeah.
hadn't come up before.
Well, if you could
You
check
know?
that, because this one's gonna be going up for auction soon.
Well, there's a, yeah, okay, there
We'll
may be a
look at it.
separate policy with respect to
Thank you.
laptops.
Are we still enrolled in the doctorate program?
Well, that's part of the reimbursement, was we have a limit,
Doctorate.
we have a maximum that we spend per
I
year.
don't want to tell you,
Yeah.
Director Hernandez, but it's too late.
They have a course in Columbia that I was quite interested in.
It's too late.
So with that, you have an ordinance before you,
Okay,
you need
yes,
a
we
motion and a
have
second, and it will be a roll
An
call.
ordinance increasing our per diem rate. I need a second and a motion.
I move to approve.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to increase the per diem to 200 per day. Yeah,
For me.
Per meeting.
per meeting.
Per day.
Those, roll call, please.
This will be ordinance 194. Director Eleanor?
Yes.
Director Hernandez?
Yes.
Director Martin?
Yes.
Director Spinella?
Yes.
Director Evans?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next is communication and outreach program.
I'll have Chris take this one away.
Thank you so much. So I'm Chris Robbins with the Public Information Department. I'm here to give you an update on communications and outreach. Just as background, back in October, the board selected Katz and Associates, and Tina Malat is here from Katz and Associates to come up with an expanded outreach program for us and communications program. And the very first task was to complete a customer survey, selected Ree and Parker Research to perform that portion. And after that, they will come up, Katz and Associates will have an annual communications program that they'll bring to us in April. The survey was conducted between February 10th and February 19th. The nice news is when they were able to get a hold of a customer, 70% of them stayed through the survey program. That's a nice stat. Had a lot of answering machines and a lot of no answers, and that's just kind of the way the world is these days. But when they did get through, a good participation rate. So the survey was intended to look at satisfaction with services and programs offered by the district, and also determine awareness and perception of issues such as our services, water rates, water conservation, drought, communication preferences, and reliability of the water supply. So the draft report was sent out to you. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at it. And Dr. Parker and Dr. Reed, Lou, and Rich are going to come up and kind of tag team. And then when they're done, I'll come back up and have some discussion items for the board. So, Dr. Parker, you're up.
It is a pleasure to be here again, and I thank you once again for the opportunity that you've afforded us to participate in this. And so, as Chris said, we'll tag team, but not exactly. I'll do the first half of the presentation and Lou the next, rather than go back and forth. I figured it's probably a little bit nicer. So, in terms of the slides, let's go here. All right, so the survey itself, just to give you a little outline of the survey itself, we committed to do 300. We ended up with 302. Happens oftentimes. You're on the phone, you're calling, you have several callers, and if one hits 300 and two other people are still talking to somebody, you don't say, okay, hang up the phone, you finish it. So that's what we have, which is a margin of error of 5.6% with 95% confidence of that. 245 of our people came from San Marcos, which we obtained with random digit dialing so that we would get all residents in San Marcos. We could not do that for the slivers that you also provide services to in Carlsbad and Vista and Escondido, because you purchase these random digit dial lists by zip code. So we would have had a very large zip code like 92009, and it would have been a needle in a haystack to find the customers there. So with regard to those three parts, we used your customer list. Difference between a customer list and a random digit dial is, of course, in a random digit dial you get people who are not your customers, apartment dwellers, people who are part of homeowners associations, that sort of thing. But we got plenty of those, so we had a lot to say about that. Then what we eventually got, we weighted to your customer percentages, which you see in the next bullet, so that the zip codes were weighted to those percentages that are shown there. A little over 18% of our participants preferred to speak in Spanish, which is a really nice percentage. It's not uncommon to see these percentages under 10, sometimes as low as 5, and I think you pointed out at one of our earlier meetings at the Water Authority's last survey there were none. So we were that was a surprisingly low number. We were really pleased to get 18% Spanish participation. And the survey itself took a little over 17 minutes on average. The purpose, I won't go through this whole slide, it's just here to document it, but the purpose of the study was, number one, to obtain information about the overall satisfaction with the services and programs of the district that the customers have, and secondarily to determine their awareness of various issues like rates and conservation and the drought, and the reliability of water, all those, and various services that you provide. And then lastly, to obtain demographic data about the population, which we used in our analysis. And what pleased us a lot about the study itself was we really got an excellent demographic distribution. And it's a really representative survey. It was a very good survey in that regard. So let me kind of just, again, rather than go through all this, just sort of point out a couple of key things on our demographics. I'd like to say that overall, with one exception here, we tie out to the city of San Marcos' census data almost perfectly. What you have here is, as I told you, we wanted to get apartment dwellers and other people who aren't direct customers of yours. And we got 28% apartment dwellers. San Marcos has 26% apartment dwellers. The persons per household size, we got a 3.05 household size. The San Marcos is 3.02. 59% whites. We have 56% whites in San Marcos. 34% Hispanic versus 30%. So the numbers are really good. The only deviation is in the age. One thing I want to remind you about the age is, remember, we speak only to people 18 and over. So when you hear things like the median age is 35 or whatever, that's going down to 0, going down to a day. So 18 and above, if you look at the median, it's in the 40s, and we were in the low 50s. We did have a slightly older population. Another thing that's important about this is right here, the respondent versus landlord, other payers of the bill, 65%. So we got 35% of our people who are not direct customers, which shows up in the survey itself in terms of awareness and those kinds of things. Okay. First question. We asked, can you name your water agency? And 58% said they could. 55% here who said yes, and then named Vallecitos as their water agency. And 3% who said they could, but then named something else or somebody else as their water agency. So that's 58%. So you might say, well, 65% pay the bill, 58% said they recognize, 55% actually recognize Vallecitos. That's pretty good. Well, it didn't actually divide up quite that way. When you look at this note down here, whoops, down the bottom right, 72% of those who pay their bill are aware of that Vallecitos is their water agency. And 32% of those for whom someone else pays the bill are aware. So the 55% didn't come out of the 65% who pay. It came out somewhat differently. Awareness of you as the sewer agency is lower. You had 31%, 27% who named Vallecitos, and another 4% naming somebody else. So 31% said, yes, I recognize, and then of the 31%, 27% were correct. 41% of those who paid their own bill recognized Vallecitos correctly, and 14% of those who don't pay the bill recognized Vallecitos correctly. Now, we didn't offer them the name. It was an open-ended. So do you know? Yes, who is it? Reason for that is in awareness questions, you don't necessarily, if you're trying to find out what people know, if you prompt them, it could awaken some latent knowledge, but it also could cause them just to guess. And this way, we actually find out specifically who can name. So, like if you asked me, I'd say it's City of San Diego, that sort of thing. So, Now, in terms of awareness of water and sewer, the groups that were most aware were people 55 to 64, homeowners, and the sliver of your customers who are in the Escondido zip code. On the less aware side, you have apartment renters, people who prefer to speak in Spanish, and people who are in the 92069 zip code. And this shows up repeatedly throughout the survey in terms of awareness and non-awareness. The same groups, the homeowners, the people who pay their bill, what we would generally expect, versus the apartment renters and Spanish preference, and 92069, which curiously enough, showed up a lot as being less aware than the others is.
If I might, if you remember the slide right before this, if you go back one, please. One more, please. In there, under the name, they say Sierra, that bottom left graph.
Yes.
Well, what we found out is we looked it up. That's a bill-paying company that represents apartments, condos, and those kind of things.
Oh.
So that is who they in fact pay their bill to. So they don't know it's Vallecitos, they think it's Sierra.
And
So it was kind of funny when you factor that in there, it was a,
Right.
we like, well, who's Sierra?
Yeah.
We looked it up, and it's a pay company that pays on behalf of apartments, condos, and HOAs.
So I didn't look that up.
Yeah,
But
we
I
looked that up.
I looked up Conservice because it showed up.
Same thing.
Same thing.
And it's the same thing.
Same thing.
Yes.
Dennis, is that also the same way that the billing's handled at mobile home parks?
Yes. It was a funny thing, once you saw that, it kind of clicked why 2/3 kind of knew who it was, because they paid us. Well, the other third pays to somebody else with a different name. It was an interesting, to me, it really stood out.
Although again, it was only 72% who paid you who actually
Who actually knew the name.
Right.
But when you write a check, don't you think you know you're writing the check?
I was kind of surprised. It seemed kind of low to me.
Yeah.
But when Lou and I talked about it, he said, well, maybe they're automatic deductions.
Yeah.
You know,
Automatic payment?
Online?
Online payment?
mhm. Just kind of lose track of it. And, I imagine there are probably some payments I make where I couldn't necessarily spell. I can't think of any, but I imagine. All right. Moving on, we asked about the services that you provide and what they are, aware of. And again, no list, just asked for them to volunteer information. And the important thing here is a relatively low level of awareness for anything other than water and sewer. Somewhat in terms of the educational programs, and then other things like pipes and wastewater and desalination and recycled really had low levels of volunteered awareness. Again, no list. Just tell us what they do. What does the water district do? Now, are you aware that the Vallecitos Water District is taking steps to increase the reliability of the water supply? 27% said yes. And they were whites, respondents in condominiums and mobile homes, curiously, 1- and 2-person households and homeowners. And it was a 27% yes, we're aware, and then asking them, okay, what this 27%, what is it that the Vallecitos Water District does? And again, without a list, volunteered. The number one response, 6% out of the 27%, was that water is purchased or to be purchased from the desalination facility. So there's some awareness, but again, it's 6% of the total population. So we're still working with a relatively low level of information. Mostly males felt that way. Women were more on the side of investing in terms of their awareness, investing in pipes, pump stations. I have no explanation for that. This is fact. And then 8% of the people of the 27%, when asked, okay, you're aware of it, what is it? 8% of them said, I don't know. So that sort of reduces the 27%. Another awareness question. Are you aware of and do you use any of the rebates that are offered for water conservation? And what we have here is that 25% of the people said they're aware, 20% of whom said they're aware but haven't taken advantage of any rebates, and only 5% here are aware and have taken advantage of rebates. And of these, the rebates that they've taken advantage of are the high efficiency toilets and appliances, replacing with turf for water saving plants, and some weather-based irrigation. But you're looking at 25% of the people who are aware, only 5% of whom have used the rebates. This other 75% is not aware, but 33 of the 75 said, if we knew about something, we might take advantage of it. So we asked, okay, what would you take advantage of? And they said, well, if I could lower my uses and you give me lower rates, I would take that. 11% said that. Another 9% said the high efficiency toilets, shower heads, appliances. 6% replacing turf. So again, 25% awareness of the rebate program, only 5% of the 25% use the rebates at all. The other 75%, 33% who are not aware, said if I were made aware of some of this, then I might use it. Mhm. Yes.
Yes, sorry,
Question.
Dr. Martin.
The purple, not aware and would not even use it if available.
Right.
So 42% just didn't care,
Right,
either way.
right.
Did anybody bring up rain barrel? That's an expensive program we have here, and I don't see rain barrels
In the question?
mentioned here at all. No, in the answers, they wish they had a rain
No,
barrel.
no.
Rain barrels are wonderful. No.
We had, I think it was in our question, if I remember correctly. It was in the question asking, do they use, or they, what do they use? In terms of conservation. Yeah, rebates for rain collection barrels. So it didn't even get 1% of the respondents.
Thank you.
Thank you, and Director Sinella has a question
Oh,
as
sir.
well.
Yeah, would it be fair to equate that 42% that are both not aware and wouldn't use it even if they were aware to probably folks who don't pay the bill themselves, their individual apartment's not metered individually, and so maybe they have less of an
Do
interest
you have the
in
report? You want to?
conserving and saving money? Because it reminds me, I saw a presentation recently by the Navy captain who is responsible for water facilities for the Naval Southwest region. And he said that was one of his challenges, is that the sailors don't pay for their own water. So there's
Right.
not a lot of,
Sure.
there's not a financial
No incentive.
incentive
Sure.
to save water, take short showers and that kind of stuff,
Right.
so.
So yeah, it's the crosstabs for the question about using, about awareness and using the rebates. Particularly the 42% who said, leave me alone.
Right,
Didn't exactly say that.
right.
That's the frequency distribution.
And we can go on if he wants to.
Okay,
continue.
I'll look at them.
Well, the other interesting about that, Director Snell, is the shower heads and all that stuff. When we hit the 93 drought, that's where the big push on all the shower heads, toilets, and all that stuff. So that was all done and completely, pretty much used, we've hit every house. So that was all done by the early 2000s. So now what you're doing is probably talking to people that already have those things. So that's even one that's kind of skewed a little bit.
Sure.
Good point.
Well, I'd like to add as well, on some of these projects, the rebates are great, but it's still an expense out of your pocket to replace your lawn or replace your toilets
Sure.
or any of that. And I think there's a great number of people who just feel they may care, but they just cannot afford to do it even with a rebate.
Well, we were just talking about
So
that
it's very difficult.
outside, which, I was saying that I have a couple neighbors who've replaced their lawn, and I know it's expensive. And I think the water authority gives you $1, if I remember correctly, a foot.
It's more, I think, for turf.
Turf.
It gets up to $2.50 or
Oh,
$3
is
a
it?
square foot. There's a combined program, but it's more than $1. It is more, but I'm from the Rivers Metropolitan Water Authority.
But, so I looked at my most recent bill, which was $250, and 150 that was sewer, so let's say I could save 50, 75 bucks if I really do a great job. That's a long recovery.
32-year payback.
That's a long recovery, and I'm sufficiently old that I don't anticipate being in that.
I think there's a lot of interesting things in that statistic. But it also tells us that we haven't made everyone aware of those who could take advantage.
Right.
so.
Okay, now another awareness question. Awareness and use of the educational services. Now, the other questions up to this point were mostly open-ended. We just asked, are you aware? And then we asked for a volunteered answer. In this case, we actually asked specifically about these. The reason basically for that was we managed to check it against the actual use. So what you can see is, awareness seemed to be highest for the California Friendly classes and for the school education programs, 20 and 18% awareness. But the school education programs and speakers at other organizations seem to be the ones that were used most, although it's still relatively low percentage. But the California Friendly classes, it wasn't exactly zero, it was rounded to zero, but it was 0.3%. And then, and the Water Academy tour, we got actually nobody. And the free landscape audits had a 1% response rate. So we're not looking at high usage rates with regard to the educational programs, although Lou will address the fact that it does show up, and I'll mention in appreciation in a few minutes that it shows up in other things. Now, the good news is people are real happy with the water district. There's an 83% good and very good rating. And over 50% of the people say that the district provides very good service, the highest level that they could rate it, which is a very nice response rate. And then you go over to the poor end, and there are only 5% of the people who have some objection of any sort. So you're always going to get that. So this is a nice piece of satisfaction, and the highest satisfaction is among females, among Spanish speakers, and among respondents in Carlsbad. And then on the lower end were Vista and our friends who knew so much in Escondido. So they were very aware, but their satisfaction level was statistically lower than the others.
But wasn't Escondido aware of who their sewer agency was?
Yes.
Well, and that's interesting because a lot of them in our district, in the rest of the district, water and sewer on one bill.
Right.
So you don't necessarily think, am I paying a sewer bill and a water? I think there's just my water bill.
Right.
But in Escondido, we do service a lot that's just sewer, don't we?
The Far East side.
So those people would know because they only are paying us for sewer.
Oh, I see.
So it's an
So that could be, yes.
So
that
it
could
kind of
affect
skews it a little bit.
That could affect it.
And they,
With a 300-person survey, if you move 10 or 15 people one way or the other, it can show.
yeah, it's interesting.
And the appreciation. And asking customers, what do you most appreciate that the district does? And again, we listed these for them to say yes or no to each. So we weren't asking for knowledge and awareness here. We're just saying, here's something, how many of you appreciate this? And they were allowed to respond, to give us 2 of these responses. So reliable water, obviously, number 1. Number 2, reliable sewer, so those keep showing up. Obviously, the main service you do. And then 2 others got pretty high ratings, or pretty high, appreciation factors. One is the recycled water used for irrigation, and the other is the educational programs, which, had not a lot of usage, but a pretty good amount of appreciation. And the most appreciation for those educational programs came from Latino residents, especially the Spanish language preference, renters, particularly apartment renters, and young people, age 34 and under, or younger. So we'll let Lou Ray come and take over for me, and then we can come back and address any questions or whatever that you might have in general. So, Lou?
Thank you, Dr. Park.
Thank you very much. And we're going to continue with some awareness questions. We asked the respondents about their awareness of the drought. There's a slide here, that's up. And it was interesting. 52%, well over half, are saying that the drought, or feel that the drought, their awareness of the drought is that it's increasing. Okay, so interesting and pleased to see that actually, that there in some reality there. Then we asked the respondents about their household water usage during the past year. And again, there was some pleasant surprise. We have over half, 51%, indicating that their water usage is decreasing, has decreased over the past year, okay. Which was encouraging. Then we followed that up by asking them, what were the motivating factors in reducing water usage? And again, these were volunteer responses. They were not read to the person. They were checked as the interviewer read them if they were mentioned. And we saw drought right up at the top again as the key motivating factor in reducing their water usage. So it keeps on cropping up, knowledge of the drought and response to problems with water. And about 25% say the drought is the motivating factor, and it's followed, by conserving is the right thing to do. But the drought is the critical one here. Then we asked the respondents what the major causes of increasing water rates are. We told them that water rates are increasing if they didn't realize that, and asked them what the major causes were. And again, these answers were volunteered. They weren't read to them, so it was a pretty open response. Again, or more than half, the dominant response here was that the drought was the major cause of the increasing water rates. 85% of the respondents responded to that particular question. It was identified largely by females and those between the ages of 45 and 54. What I want to emphasize here is that the drought looms large in respondents' awareness of water issues. The next area we pursued was reliability. We asked respondents about the reliability of the San Diego County water supply. And we find that over half, and you see that in the left portion of the slide, that it's unreliable. About 51% actually are saying that they feel the San Diego County water supply is unreliable. And we wanted to know what are some of the critical things that can be done to ensure reliability of the water supply. And again, we asked this open-endedly without any fixed answers. They just responded, it was volunteered. And 80% responded to the question. And the largest percentage of people responded in terms of conservation. And you can see that as the highest bar there, 27%. Largely by those who pay their own bill, and 3 to 4 person households are saying this. It's followed pretty far down the list, but it's still followed by ocean desalination as something that might ensure water reliability, improving water quality, and importing more water, but they're real far down the list after water conservation. Okay, then we got into communication and information, a major part of this survey. We asked, what are the major news media sources for learning about community issues? And respondents could select up to 2 responses. It was also volunteer, so they weren't specified. And the largest, of course, 58%, is television, find out about community issues there. Followed, a pretty low second there, by newspapers, largely the Union Tribune, 14%. What's particularly important to note about this slide is that only 5% of the respondents indicated that they learned about community issues from social media.
Probably because we just started doing it.
It could be,
Well be.
although the next slide will show that they're not unfamiliar with social media, because 59% of the respondents use some social website. The largest one being Facebook, 49% there. But that means everything about Facebook. Pictures, communications with friends and family, and so on.
Doctor, can you go back one slide? I just missed it. It went by pretty quick. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. And you can see the rest of them there. Facebook, largely white males, and not much there. But I just wanted to make that point between the news and the general use of social media. Okay, just a few cross-tabulations or a few significant relationships here regarding news media. I won't read this whole thing, just want to point out a couple of things. With regard to television, it's primarily those who've been in the district a little longer, over 10 years, Latinos, renters, especially those who live in apartments. For those who are interested primarily in getting the news from newspapers, whites and Asians, homeowners, and again, over in Escondido, 92026. online news, which was, by the way, third after newspapers, in terms of people who get their community information. Again, less than 10 years being in the district. Homeowners, particularly single-family homes, condos, and whites, and those who live in Carlsbad. Okay, we are also interested if respondents, if customers, are reading the newsletter that accompanies their monthly bill. And what we find is that over 60%, 62% read this newsletter at least sometimes, okay? And you'll see that on the right side there, the blue, the red, and the green are those who read the newsletter. And then we asked, hey, these people who use it sometimes, do you find it useful? 55% of those people who read it, at least sometimes, find it to be useful. And the groups that read it are largely those over 35 years old, those who've been a resident of the district for more than 10 years, and homeowners. Not quite the same story here with the annual water quality report. Significantly, yes.
Sorry, quick question before you get to that. If you go back a slide, I'm just interested in the Hispanic population. When you first called on the telephone and said we're doing a survey, if they spoke Spanish only, did you have a Spanish-speaking person
Yes.
asking the questions?
Oh, yes. As soon as that was recognized, a person was moved over to speak Spanish.
So that same person answering the question about, do you read the flyer that comes in your bill, probably, I don't think we do that in Spanish, do we? The splash or the
Splash,
bill,
yeah.
the bill, in the bill? So they would have to answer in the negative about that
And
because,
that would be, yeah.
but is that shown somewhere? Because you had a 20% population that would
we
seem to
could- we
skew
could-
your numbers or could skew your numbers.
It could show, if we took that out, a better reading for English. We'd have to cross-tabulate it for,
And
to
we
find
can
out.
do that if you want to let us know exactly what you want.
Well, just a thought on that particular one, do you read Splash, do you read the bill? Well, if they're Spanish, and if we don't send it, they can't read it.
It's
So
the
we
18%.
can run that for you easily. And the other questions you asked about who's in that not aware, and if we're aware, would use it. You know, we can get that information.
Yeah, we have to run the cross-tabulation.
Okay. Might change your view, I don't know. Thank you.
Or at least a footnote.
Let me,
Yes,
question. Do we have any knowledge of how that rates with other newsletters from either cities or other agencies? That 38% never read it, and you've got 50, I think you said, about 50 some that do some, at least sometimes. How does that fare with the rest of the organizations that have newsletters? Do we have any idea on that?
We do, but we don't have it off the top of our head when we get that easy.
Yeah, I would be, because,
We can get you the Otay Water District, for example,
yeah.
the information on that. We don't have it with us.
No, I'd be interested to know that. I mean, it doesn't look good. We spend a lot of time and energy on our newsletter. And based on this, we could be doing potentially something else. But however, maybe this is the norm and that's what you expect. And even if you buff it up or something, it's going to not raise it much.
I'm sorry, one other follow-up today. I'm just curious, because I've tried this out recently with a different type of news thing that goes out, but when the question is asked, do you read what comes along with your monthly bill, the number's 38%. Those people are just saying, no, I just toss it out automatically. You have sometimes people saying, as I'm throwing it out, I don't see a picture that I know, so I throw it away. The other people saying, well, I saw a picture, I thought it was of a mouse, I stopped and I looked at it. So sometimes I read it as they threw it out. I mean, that's just another breakdown, is if there's a picture, people stop and read stuff. If there isn't a picture, they don't. But you must see that in all your surveys.
It's just, it's hard to know people view differently what they say sometimes and most times, and it has to be somewhat subjective in how people view or feel about that particular time frame.
Whatever it is, yeah. Thank you, Doc, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, so the annual quality report, certainly much lower than the newsletter. Only 29% say that they read it. Residents of 5 years or more do so more often than not, homeowners and those in Escondido again.
If I could, on that note, on this one, we knew this about 2 years ago. And the health department allowed us now just to post it online. We don't have to mail it to them anymore.
Good.
Yeah, so now it's just available online. We can give them a hard copy if they want it, but it saved us about $22,000 not mailing it out.
If I may,
Yes.
I know it was in there somewhere and I've just forgotten it. Do you know what percentage of the calls, off the top of your head, are the number that were from that 92026 Escondido response?
We would have that in the frequency.
I mean,
Frequencies are weighted.
Okay.
So,
it was at 1 or 2% or?
so I don't,
You showed it.
We'd have to get the raw frequency.
Okay, no problem.
because they're weighted in the frequencies.
Okay, I'm just curious how many that was.
That's a certain thing.
Number from,
All right, just a few comments here by way of summary on this slide. Some of what Richard said, some of what I said, but we feel that these are kind of key. There's strong indications of support for Vallecitos services. Particular appreciation for reliable water provided to households and businesses, reliable sewer service, recycled wastewater for irrigation, and educating the public about conservation. There is lack of awareness among residents that Vallecitos Water District is the agency that provides their water and sewer services. There's general lack of awareness of Vallecitos educational services and programs. And respondents make little use of these services even when they are aware of them. Respondents feel that the water supply in San Diego County is unreliable, and they are largely unaware that the district is taking steps to increase this reliability. Important information here about drought. There is a good deal of awareness, just over 50%, that the California drought has been increasing. Also, it's fairly, I think, good news that water usage has declined during the past year, also about 50%, a little bit more. And that the main cause, it's not on here, but the main cause of water rates is the drought. So the drought is clearly on people's minds as a critical concern when they're thinking about water. So it's really a good heads up and a good start in the direction of pursuing that concern. And finally, just with regard to communications, television and newspapers are key for people finding out about community issues and community concerns. It's also particularly noteworthy that only 5% of them use social media to find out about community issues and concerns. Okay? If there are any other questions, we have to try to answer them for you.
I do have one question, and I think it's, I have simply forgotten the difference. It's a question for you, actually.
Okay.
Could you explain the difference between when you say 176 is the mean and 176 is the median? Because throughout the report, you use the two words, and I didn't take the time to look them up, and I was hoping you could
Okay,
give me a quick answer.
When we talk about the median is really the value of the center. And it doesn't matter how many values are high above it or how many are really low below it. It's not affected by outliers. Central
Just
figure,
smack in the middle.
right smack in the middle, where the mean is affected by high values and low values. And if you have particularly high values, it can skew the mean high, and the mean wouldn't be very well representative of that population. It would skew high.
Is it more like an average?
You go to hear about median housing prices. They don't talk about median housing prices. And the reason for that is they pick the middle housing price. Just 400 and something.
I knew there was a difference. I just
And
couldn't remember.
the mean would have the Rancho Santa Fe and La Jolla houses and whatever, and the mean, I have no idea what the mean is, but it's certainly higher than 400.
Well, let's suppose in a given month, a large number of houses sold in Rancho Santa Fe, very high, skewing the mean way out there. And if you use the median, it wouldn't affect the central tendency as much.
Wouldn't matter whether it's over 5 million or 500,000.
I see.
State median.
Thank you for explaining that.
Okay. Chris?
So you should have in your packet one additional slide in your packet, and it was basically the items that we looked at and thought, okay, these look like some areas that we really want to have outreach on. We need additional outreach to the smaller entities, and the ones that aren't the end users, the apartments, the condominiums, the HOAs, and the mobile home parks, the folks that live in mobile homes. We want to educate our customers that we are increasing supply reliability. That one was a big one that didn't seem to be out there. And just as an example, with the San Diego North Economic Development Council, we have an article going out about how we're increasing reliability through purchasing water from the desal. We want to grow the social media. There's a lot of growth and an ability to get additional outreach through social media. We also need to let our customers know that we're their sewer service provider. It's kind of obvious that people know we're the water provider, and it's down on whether we're their sewer provider. And it kind of goes back to General Manager Lamb's statement that if you want to engage somebody, you tell them you work in water, and if you want to cut the conversation short, you tell them you work in sewer. It's just one of those things that nobody really likes to think about, but it is something we want to engage our customers on and let them know that. Director Martin, you got a question?
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
Director Martin.
Can I ask a question? These outreach recommendations are from the doctors?
This is from myself. They created the survey, and this is me reaching out to the board looking for some direction, and then we'll come back with Tina and Katz, and Patsy's been away, I think, at water reuse, but she's back in town, and and we'll put together a targeted plan going these directions if you all look at these and think these are good things to pursue.
Okay, so just have this right. These are your recommendations based upon the findings. This is
Correct.
what you personally believe. Let me ask you one question, and I'm going to get bricks thrown at me, especially by Mike. Number 3, we need to grow social media outreach. The information they just gave me said, yeah, that's a distant third place.
And that's very accurate, and there's kind of this disconnect. There's a certain amount of, with social media, that's not necessarily where people go to look for news. When people go to look for news, they go to KPBS, they go to UT, they go to their television set, and they look at the television news. But that doesn't mean people don't participate in social media. And I think the percentage was, 59% of the folks do use Facebook and get on it. Are they going there to get their news specifically? Maybe not so, but they still may be getting information. And there's still good information that can be provided. And social media is a different beast. It's not the same animal as television news or newspaper. I think we shared earlier when we had that hydrant clipped and the person left their license plate. That thing went viral, Everybody was sharing that thing, but is that really news? Maybe not so, but it's interesting and people like to share those things. So there's definitely value to it, and I do think we want to grow it. One of the other things that we want to educate our customers is...
Just one moment, I think Director Martin had it.
Just let me continue. And I still don't know if that dress was pink or white, purple or yellow. I don't really care.
But you know there was a dress.
Yeah, but I don't know anything about it, other than there was a dress.
That's
That
all you
doesn't
need to
tell me
know.
anything. Doesn't tell me who made it, who cares, nobody. We need to educate our customers that we also provide sewer services. This is what you gleaned from the survey.
Right.
What makes you glean that? I'm just out of curiosity. Usually people only know about a service when there's a problem.
Well, and the one point is there was a much higher value for customers that understood that we provided their water services and much less for sewer services. And I think part of it is the fact that it's an undiscussed item. People don't particularly talk about that. I live over in Vista, and Vista Irrigation is my water district, and I know that very well. Well, Buenas Sanitation is my sewer district, but I don't pay much attention to that. But it is a service that we provide, and it is a very important service.
Okay, another one of your recommendations, we need to educate our customers about our efforts to improve supply reliability through desal.
Correct. That was one of the ones that looked pretty poor, that customers did not understand we were taking efforts to improve supply reliability. And one of the good things we're doing is connecting up to that desal plant, and we're going to get 1/5 of our water supply in the future coming from that plant rather than these restricted supplies up in Northern California that are really going to be impacted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So
Yes,
the
Director-
last one I was going to, oh, yeah?
Sorry,
Oh,
Director
sure,
Hernandez.
Director Hernandez?
Tongue in cheek, and I'm joking out there in television land, I said earlier, if we really want people to know who we are, we just need to turn it off for a weekend.
You get a hook?
And my goodness, they'll be at the front door, they'll seek us out. We don't want to do that, obviously, but are other ways by which we can get the word out? It's interesting, unless there's a big bullet on the splash, okay. And it's similar to North County EDC, we get that electronically every month, and the bullet points are there, and if I don't see a bullet point of interest, I just cat away.
Sure.
But are there other proven methods by which we can enhance the readership of our newsletter or our website that we're looking into?
Yes, and I'll be teaming up with Katz on coming up with a whole communications plan that we'll bring back to this board and talk about, okay, these are the items we want to do. These are just some of the things that I pulled out from reading this survey. These are things that me as a new public information supervisor think we need to improve on.
Okay.
Just real quick, the last one I really wanted to was, help our customers conserve water. And I was disappointed in the rebates, but I think, there's potential to get customers to participate more with rebates than what showed in the survey. There's just got to be a little nudge and a little push. And we do have various things that are available, from rain barrels to toilets to landscape replacement. There's a lot of different things. Some of them are going to cost a lot of money. Dr. Parker was explaining how much the landscape replacement's going to cost. That's going to be a big high-end thing. But you can get a rain barrel and get a rebate and pretty much pay for the thing. It's, no out-of-pocket expense. Maybe that's what an individual can do.
Yes, Director Martin.
Question, you brought up a subject near and dear to me, rain barrels. Quite expensive for somebody. They might take a class and get it for free, but Vallecitos and I think the city pay for it. They're expensive. And my guess is there's a few of them in use today. My guess is the majority aren't. That's an expensive proposition. Is that something, considering the numbers we just heard, that people don't even know about the rain barrels at all? We've given out at least 300 or 400 in the last 3 or 4 years.
And rain barrels are one of those ones that people can get a rebate for, up to $75 through Metropolitan. And the ones that we purchased, the cost of them was about $69, so you'd get the full amount of the rebate back. So your full expense of like $69, it goes up to $75. So there's no out-of-pocket for you. You're going to have to pay it first, but you'll get a rebate back for the full amount.
No, I understand, but you're saying that that's the entire barrel cost is $69?
Yeah.
I thought Vallecitos was paying for half and the city was paying for half.
That's accurate.
Yeah, we split
You're
it. We split
correct.
that.
So,
Okay.
but the cost for the actual rain barrel was 69. So yeah, we're gonna split that with
With the
City of
city.
San
So
Marcos.
someone's paying for it,
Yeah, yeah.
not the homeowner.
That was just a giveaway that we did that went back in time, and we had leftover customers that didn't get one, and we wanted to take care of them, so we did.
Yeah, it might not be the best bang for our buck, and
Amen.
the trick is, right now, guess what? It ain't raining.
Not much to catch.
On top of that, it's like 1/10 of a unit.
Well, I think just to go to that topic, if you think about it, it's about 1/10 of a unit, and if you use 14 units a month, average, and 7 of it's outside, and you cut back by a lot, you've got 130 gallons sitting there that you have to take by hand, because it's not pressurized.
Right.
You can't put it in your roof, you can't put it somewhere like that, because 100 gallons of water weighs a lot. So it's got limited value. I think part of it is just one of those things, hey, you can do this. It works well with the city for their MS4 because it's a first flush catch. So it catches the goop that's resting on your roof for the summer season. It collects it in there and it doesn't put the sediment down. So it's a touchy-feely more than it is a very pragmatic thing that, which just one of those things we do.
Well, later on in the board meeting, based on this last conference, there's some good things that came up relative to that.
But again, it's just one of the things, and I think what Chris will explain the next steps, where we're headed on this for the board.
Before you do, Chris, I believe Director Elliott.
I just had one more comment. The weather-based irrigation controllers, I think, are another, they're a very expensive item. And if it only rains 4 or 5 times a winter, and it's, you know, it's got to rain and where it's like the rain barrels. And otherwise, you're either looking at, it's 60 degrees out, 70 degrees, or it's 95. And it's, I don't know how much value with irrigation controller, you know, with that gets the satellite data for the weather conditions.
Well, I agree, and I think a
In
lot of.
in an arid climate where it doesn't hardly rain.
We know it's dry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not too hard to figure that one out. I think it's, again, it's the evolution of things that come onto the market, the value, okay, we can do this. Now, if you're a farmer and you've got that weather-based thing and
Yeah,
you've
that's
got 200
different.
acres,
Right.
you know, half an inch of irrigation makes a huge difference to you. Does it make any difference to me at home when I've got rock and succulents? No, because that's off anyway. It doesn't matter. So I think, again, it's one of those things that as we evolve, there's certain things that show value. Then after 2 or 3 years, and it's hardened. It's like our demands inside, the rebates for showers, shower heads, toilets, that demand is already hardened. There's no toilets left to replace that we can even do it, so that there's no more value to it.
Director Sinella, did you have a comment?
Yeah,
And I'd like to make one.
Before we move off of the recommendations, and thank you, Chris, thank you for the valuable data in the survey. Just not to throw bricks at Director Martin, I would never do that, but I will point out, though, that a couple
You
things.
started it.
The average age of those surveyed were 53, for whatever reason, but I would reckon that social media use is probably more prevalent in a little bit younger generation. So that could be part of that 5% that we took. And then another thing to keep in mind, not only do I think that social media is going to be the future, you hear about reports that newspapers like UT may not be around in a few years. But keep in mind that to put out a newsletter or the splash like we do, it takes somebody from staff or multiple people from staff to put it together. Then you have to print it, and then you have to mail it. Social media, you just need the staff participation. Everything else from that point on is free. So there's a little bit of a savings there as well, and a little bit more bang for your buck. And then on the overall awareness piece as it pertains to conservation, I don't think, I think it's a good idea just in general to work on increasing that awareness out there of what we have to offer, regardless of what it might be, and not get caught up on just one specific thing. That's part of all of that. So I like these recommendations. I think that this is a good start, and I also think that in the past, my impression as being somebody who's been on the board for just about a year and a half is that prior boards did not put a priority on public outreach. And if the board's not putting a priority on public outreach, it's not gonna be staff's priority. And we've taken a different approach. We have a PR firm. You're here today because of us. because we've prioritized this matter, and I think that this is all going to be positive for our customers, and I think if we do a poll after our efforts have had a chance to mature maybe a year or two down the road, we'll see different results. So thank you for everybody's efforts.
And if I may, yes, thank you. The poll was very interesting. I think it taught us a lot. We have a lot to be proud of, and I think we have some definite areas to improve on. I like the recommendations also. I myself am not very good at the social media, but what I do like about it, less than, like you said, people don't go to it for their news, but they are drawn to it out of curiosity and fun stories. And I do think we have a way, especially with Facebook, we just have to have a lot more people running into our fire hydrants, and we need to have pipes exploding. But I mean, no, but I'm just saying, I think we have a way of telling what our district is doing. And I mean, even if we have a picture of somebody who's just crawled out of the sewer from doing some repair, and this is what Vallecitos is doing for you, I think that's interesting, people. It's not going to be in the newspaper. But I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and I hope you'll really look into that and make it like, oh my gosh, I just have to go see what's happening over there. And then, but I also have to say I'm a little hesitant as Director Martin, because it's an unknown to me, and I don't know how much you spend and how long it takes to get results. Now, we're all going to assume that the young people will continue to the social media, but what if they turn 53 and start reading papers? I mean, we'll be in trouble. And that could happen. And then secondly, on the very last one, on the educate the customers about conservation, I think I would like you to come up with as many ways to reward people for conserving, whether it's a rebate, because there's a lot of rebates. We've looked at rain barrels, and on our property, we'd have to put huge tanks. We spent a fortune going native, and then got hit with a giant water bill because they were put in July, and we had to water them to keep them alive. We've looked at the weather stations, and by the time we got through the whole thing, it was like, oh my gosh, we're not doing it. Not because we don't want to conserve water, but because it was complicated. But I think there's many, many ways to get to individuals to reward them, you know, pulling bills out of a hat to say, you conserved from last month, something like that. And finally, I think it's important we let them know about the sewer, because a lot of people will say, I had this bill, it was $80, but I only paid $10 for water. And they don't even really know what those things are. And some of them don't even, they include sewer as part of the water bill. And I think it's real important that we let them know it was spent to check the water and certify water and treat the water and pump the water and bring the water and take it away from your house. And so you have a lot of, I think, fun but challenging. I like your approach, and thank you very much. Yes?
Before we leave communication, if I would like to ask a question on the overall program, if I may.
You may, but not today.
Okay. Can you give me an update as to how we're proceeding with the other elements within the communication program, the Speakers Bureau information, and the I think we're going to be talking about some social media, just so that, and maybe not even an update other than, you know, next month we're going to have a list of what's going on.
Yeah. Part of what we want to do is bring this survey results back, talk to you about things that we think we need improvement in, but then actually work with Katz and Associates to develop a communications plan, which would include that Speakers Bureau. And I was just recently out at Lake San Marcos Community Association, which is an association of associations, and talked to them about plant replacement, low water use plants, and installing, changing out your turf. So that's, you know, that's part of the equation and part of the whole communications plan. But that's also something that we're going to be working with Katz on and developing and bringing back to the board.
And could we get a time frame for those items so that we can see how this is progressing? And
Sure.
Because
I think I included it in February's, but I can just bring it into the next one.
It's always useful if you'll.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
indulge
the
us
last
with a
schedule was in the
constant
second
update.
board meeting in February. There was a copy of the schedule. But we didn't want to move forward with any of that stuff until the board had a chance to see what the survey said.
Okay.
And then because we didn't want to head down this path to something that really wasn't the board's interest, but if what Chris is recommending is along the lines, or if you guys have anything else you specifically want us to make sure we talk about, then let us know and we'll include that in the communication.
Okay.
Yeah, I got my pen right here to write down a note.
Okay, and I believe Director Martin would like to
I
make a
think
comment.
part of my education is I would like to watch you give these presentations. And I'm sure it was on our list that we were at Lake San Marcos, but I must have missed it. But I would have liked to attend to learn from you how this is done.
Very good.
And I want to thank Mike because thanks to social media, I now know what a Kardashian is. Very important, very important.
Are you sure you wanted to know?
No, but I'm sure it was important.
And Director Alipar?
Yeah, I had one last observation on the outreach recommendations. Something that's conspicuously absent is water reclamation efforts. I think that kind of goes hand in hand with the desal, because that got about the same percentages. I think in the survey it was about 2 or 3%.
Pretty low.
Pretty low, and Vallecitos might not be able to do a whole lot individually on the water reclamation side, but regionally, I think there's a lot of answers to doing something with it.
Absolutely.
And if I may, that just reminded me on that, we have here that we are doing desal and reclamation, but I think part of this thing is the customers are receiving a regional report in the papers about the whole state is in drought and San Diego's being cautious in metro. I think we need to tie in not just that we're doing desal, but what is the entire county doing as far as the QSA and the Colorado River, and what we're doing to help San Diego and us as part of San Diego. I think we've been kind of proactive in becoming much more aggressive about the desal, but I think we need to give them some reassurance that the region's working on it. Reclaim's a good point. Yes?
Just to add to that, the Water Authority is actually completing their survey. Right now, they're doing it this week and next week. And they actually tackle those kind of questions because they obviously are wholesale. They don't care what the customer says because they've only got 24 of them. So I think what we'll be able to do, Director Evans, is probably piggyback off what they learn and take some of that information that they develop and do, then we can actually reference and use it in our outreach as well. So they're tackling all those regional questions.
Yes, yes, Director
One
Martin.
last little thing, I really want to thank you very much. I don't know how to say it, I was a little curious about how you were going to do your survey, and I think you did a great job. You included the entire population. You gave really great answers. I read it in depth, and it was very interesting, so I want to know that, I want you to know that I appreciate it. And this is no offense to any other agencies, but I've read other agencies that weren't even near what you guys compiled, so thank you very much. I appreciate it, thank you.
Well said.
Thank you. I think with that, we're done with this one, so
You know
the
where
next
you're
thing is.
headed there, Mr. Roll?
I am staying, but I'm pulling up the debt funding one.
We'll send you guys a copy of the updated schedule, just to make sure you have it, and that's what we'll be following, so you guys know where we're going.
Excellent. And I thank the board for all their suggestions and comments and questions and helping lead them forward with their task.
Thank
Oh,
you.
Thank you.
thank you very
If
much.
you have any other questions, we wrote down the ones that you asked.
Yeah, that's right, we'll get
Okay.
that information back out to you.
And then anything else, we'll be happy to.
Thank you, Dr. Park.
Thank you very much.
Good job, Tina.
All right. Don't drink any water. Okay, the next item is item 3.2, potential debt refunding. It's on page 42 in our board packet, and I believe, will that be you?
Yeah, well, I'll introduce our financial advisor to give a presentation here. We have, Vallecitos Water District has about $66 million in debt on our balance sheet, but $54 million of that are from COP, Certificates of Participation, particular type of bond left on that. periodically our underwriter will send me analysis and say, hey, it's a great time to refund this thing. And I'm always like, okay. And then I look at my financial advisor and I say, hey, what do you really think? I mean, that's a sales thing. If they make a lot of money if we go ahead and refund it. So I keep them in check, and I appreciate it because it's great to get the updates. They really pay attention to the markets, the underwriters do, and send you. And then it's wonderful to have our financial advisor on board to say, yeah, there's some potential for savings, and we look at that, and when it's broad enough to say, hey, this is something to consider, we bring it to you, and that's the point we're at right now. So, and I've asked the financial advisors, you take a look at this in this non-biased viewpoint and see, is it really worth it? And we're going to present to you some options today. One option is to do nothing, and then another option is to go ahead and refund, which means issue more debt, refund these bonds, issue more debt at a lower rate, refund these bonds so you save on your interest costs and such. One is to do it right now, one is to wait till there's a call date on our bonds, and one, like I said, is to do nothing. But I asked our financial advisor from Fieldman Rollap to come, and we have with us today Tom DeMars. And Tom is gracious enough to have put together this presentation for you. And take it away, Tom.
Great, thank you, Tom. Good evening. Tom DeMars with Fieldman Rollap and Associates. Good evening, Madam President and members of the board. Happy to be here tonight. I want to try and set up an analogy or a context in which we want to kind of look at this potential opportunity that's before you. We've all had, or most of us have had, mortgages over our life. And as interest rates change, we take opportunities to refund our mortgage. And that's really a simplistic way of saying it, but this is the same type of analogy, same type of process that we go to, however, a little bit more complex in nature. So as far as what I'm going to address tonight, there'll be a background, thank you. There'll be a background of what the 2007 COPs or bonds have been, give you an idea of what the general market conditions are currently, and what the current savings estimates and what the options are, and Tom has generally described those already, and then provide an opportunity for any discussion or questions that you might have. And also, as we go through it, if you have questions or comments that you want to make, be happy to address that at the time as well. Okay, so first of all, the background then on the COPs or bonds were originally issued in 2005, and they were an adjustable rate note at that time. And it was first to refund the Twin Oaks Reservoir and refund and provide new money for the second Twin Oaks Reservoir project, and also additional new money for purposes for upgrades for the Metal Arc Water Reclamation Facility. Those were issued in 2005, and then they were fixed to an interest rate in 2007, converted to a fixed interest rate rather than a variable rate. And as Tom indicated, that there's a call provision that would be available in July of 2017. If I stop there for a second, in bonds there are what's called call protection. And typically it's a 10-year call protection. So from the time that you issue the debt to 10 years out, those bonds are typically non-callable unless you do an advanced refunding and structure an escrow and do some financial engineering with it. And oftentimes there's a premium associated with it if you call them earlier than at the regular call date. The current ratings on the bonds are AA from S&P and AA plus from Fitch, the rating agencies. Currently, the outstanding maturities are from 2015 to 2035 as the remaining life on that issue. The initial par amount was $63.8 million, with an average annual debt service of a little over $4.1 million. The true interest cost at the time, which is the overall interest cost associated with the financing at the time, was right around 4.67%. And again, the call date was established at that point in time for a July 1, 2017 call at 100% or at par. And as Tom indicated, the outstanding par amount now is right at 53.8 million. So some of the market conditions that we have been facing over the last couple of years, and particularly the last year, the supply of tax-exempt issuance really is going to be expected to be a critical component for decision-making purposes and timing as we go through 2015, 2016, and 2017 as we start approaching this 10-year period of time when bonds were issued in that time frame. Supply is expected to increase in 2015 from up to about 400 billion as compared to last year, which is about 330 billion, which is very low from historical standards. Typically, the principal and interest payments on the bonds are projected to be at the highest levels during the May to August timeframe. It's just that 6-month cycle in which you pay principal one time a year and interest component twice a year, semi-annually. So there's been some volatility with the supply and lack of demand, or strong demand but low supply. So it has impacted the interest rates in up and down fashion and has caused some volatility and provided the district with an opportunity. While rates are higher from their near historical lows that we've seen in January, they still remain quite low in a historical overall context. And at the same time, these new higher levels have begun to attract buyers back into the market because they had started to exit because the earnings that they could make on their investments was so low that they were going to other securities to get a better return on their investment. And the issuances have been absorbed by the investors. So at the first of the year, as maturities are beginning to come to fruition on January 1, typically January 2nd, there's a lot of money that floats into the market, and so there's a lot of money available for reinvestment of what was in bonds that had already matured or had already been refunded. So there's been some positive flows into the bond funds, which is a good sign, and particularly over the last few months. So of the recent market conditions over the course of the first 2 months of 2015, the municipal market has been affected by various cross currents. So coming out of 2014, like I said earlier, there had been a low issuance supply, but there was a high demand, but very low interest. And the AAA MMD rates, which is, the MMD is a municipal market data, which is a municipal index that we use, similar to like the S&P index or the Dow Jones index. That's what we use in the municipal market. And it indicated that coming off of 2014, Treasury rates were very low, and most issues that were done last year were in the form of refundings or switched bonds, so that you had bonds that had been issued in 2014, they came up upon their call date 10 years later in 2014, and you refunded those and just switched one for the other. It still had outstanding debt, but it was at a lower interest rate. So early in 2015, there were higher volumes. There were more issues coming to the market. As I said earlier, money became available as bonds had matured and the money market funds had investable proceeds to be able to invest in more. And the rates had bottomed out at about 2.5%. So since then, and throughout so far in March, yields remain low in February, and demand has fallen off somewhat, to the point where it has increased basis points, meaning 43 basis points or 0.43% interest rate increase. Unemployment has been released, and there seems to be some consensus that that is improving and showing promising economics as far as the recovery is concerned, but also very tentative, as the FOMC indicated today, with the patience that they've had over the last few meetings. So the improvement has been kind of tenuous, mainly because of things that have been happening globally. In Russia, Ukraine, the Middle East continues to be in some upheaval, as well as the European nations. And buyer attention has increased, even in spite of all those, but it keeps the rates low. So the interest rate movement patterns, and this is just from the first of the year through, the last week or so, and up to actually the 13th, last Friday. So you can see both from in that upper left-hand chart, the 10-year Treasury versus the 30-year Treasury, and you can see the volatility that has existed, during that period of time. And on the right-hand chart, the bond funds have continued to grow since January. That means money's coming into the bond funds being available for reinvestment. And it has fallen off a bit in the February timeframe. And then in our municipal market data, which is our index that we use, the 10-year yield and the 30-year yields travel pretty much in the same pattern and are not as volatile as the Treasury rates have been. However, the AAA MMD rates, the yields are back to what they were at the early part of December, even though we had this decrease in January and part of February, but it's come back up. And so it's at about the level it was in early December, still at very attractive historical lows. The current market 30-year Treasury rates are at levels also seen in early January, even though they've gone down and they've come back up. And then the 10-year Treasury, which is kind of the benchmark that is being used, has decreased by 13 basis points since last week. Now, the FOMC, the Federal Open Market Commission, met today, and the expectation for interest rates have been discussed, and there's a lot of nuance to what Janet Yellen comes out with in her monthly report and her testimony before Congress. And the operable word has been patient last time. And so they've removed patient from the comment period and have eliminated that from what their comments have been, and then they're going to continue to wait to see what's going to happen, with an anticipation now that there may be an increase, starting in January, not January, but June. But we've seen a number of these come by the wayside over the last few years. Some of it have been impacted quite strongly when the Fed did their buyback of treasuries back in May, June of 13. There was a huge spike in interest rates at that point in time, and then it settled back down, and there's been some volatility since then. But still at very attractive historical rates. The current savings estimate on Vallecitos' transaction, while there's been this upward pressure on interest rates, the refunding opportunity really continues to produce favorable results, indicating why the underwriters have been hounding Tom as far as being able to do something with that or not. So what we've done over the years is that we've monitored the district's debt as well. And we let Tom know and Dennis know, where the market is, what's happening. Is it something that you want to be looking at now or bring to the board for consideration or for any movement on that? So right now on the refunding results, there would be no extension of the current term of the current bonds. We would leave it at 2015 to 2035, assuming that we move forward. The refunded par would be at that 53.7 million figure, which is the remaining par amount. The total cash flow savings, and this is just the cash flow, of a little over $6 million. And you can see the difference in the prior debt service over on the right-hand side versus what the projected new refunding debt service would be and what the estimated savings would be over that period of time. So the total of that is a little over $6 million with an average cash flow savings of about 300,000. Taking the net present value of that is about $4.5 million, and the net present value savings as a percent of the refunded par amount, the 53 million, is 8.4%. Now let me stop there for a minute. The 8.4% is rather significant in the sense that the GFOA, which is the Government Finance Officers Association, which is a national organization, in their policies and guidelines say that anywhere between a 3 and 5% net present value saving would be something that an agency would want to consider moving forward on a refunding. So that kind of gives you a benchmark of where you are in comparison to what the GFOA guidelines are. Now, because there's a call date in July of 17, if you did proceed now, we're 3 years, where we can't actually call bonds. So an escrow has to be set up and purchase U.S. Treasury securities, which are held by the trustee until those bonds actually come to that call date and those bonds are called. And that is the $1.9 million of the cost of the refunding escrow period. And so that indicates a refunding efficiency of about 70%, which is a little bit on the cusp as to whether to move forward or not, but certainly something to consider. The reason why that there's such a heavy cost, almost $2 million on the escrow, is that when you reinvest those monies in the escrow by purchasing U.S. securities, you all know what the Treasury rates have been. They've been very, very low, and so you're not getting a return on what that funding would be to be able to decrease that amount of the escrow for that period between now and July of 17. The true interest cost, however, would be in the range of 2.98 versus the 6.47 I think it was on page 3. So there is, like in your mortgage, if you went from a 5 to a 3% on your existing mortgage, you certainly would probably move forward on something like that. The estimated cost of issuance would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $230,000 to $250,000. That covers legal fees, rating agency fees, trustee, financial advisor, and other costs. And those, by the way, are all subject and are contingent on moving forward. There are no fees that the district comes out of pocket with unless the deal is actually consummated. So the refunding options, as Tom kind of went through, is actually there are 4. That you can do nothing and just let the bonds remain outstanding and continue to pay the debt service as it currently exists out of the net revenue that the district has. Option 1 then would be what's called an advanced refunding as soon as possible, which would be the schedule in the back, which would be in the June timeframe, hopefully prior to any interest rate increase. So that would preserve your $300,000 in annual cash flow savings and provide about the $4.5 million or 8% net present value savings as market conditions exist today. Now, obviously, by the time June comes, it's going to be whatever the market is. What this does, it minimizes the interest rate risk that the district would incur if they just stayed, and you just continued to stay and the rates continued to go up and you wouldn't be able to take advantage of that opportunity. The second option would be to wait a year, 12 months from now, and assuming that current rates would remain the same, that the savings per year would be about 430,000 annual savings on a cash flow, or about approximately 6 million or 11.7%. So as you get closer to that call date, your escrow shortens the time frame, which also reduces the escrow cost period. But remember, if interest rates remain unchanged, that would only happen that way. So the interest rate cushion that you would have, or the sensitivity, and there's another slide that I'll show you. From current rates today, you could afford to wait or have the interest rates increase by about 0.4%, or 39 basis point, versus option 1. Now, the hesitation there is, well, we've seen a 40 basis point move since January. So what period of time do you want to look at as to that volatility and when you would have that 40 basis point increase? Option 3 would just wait the 24 months to the current call date in July of 2017. It gives you higher savings potential. Again, if interest rates remain unchanged as of today, it would provide about 15.7% net present value savings and almost $8 million in overall net present value savings. The refunding escrow, the cost of that would virtually go away because you would probably be in a 30-day escrow period rather than a 2-year escrow period. So it would be very minimal as to the negative arbitrage on those bonds. And then they would be called in July 1st of 2017. And the interest rate sensitivity there would be that if interest rates rose 0.93% or almost a full point, that would have to rise that much in order to maintain the same savings that you would have in option 1. And then on the sensitivity analysis, here's the chart here, excuse me, of scenarios, or options 1, 2, and 3 for the various, what the rates would be, the approximate savings, the net present value, and the interest rate cushion outlined in red. And then as your escrow efficiency over time improves, you go from 70 to 84 to 99%, almost negligible if you waited until then. A potential refunding schedule goal would be to, if the board decided that they wanted to move forward on this, would be to price sometime in mid-June, close in July, and we would maintain a keen eye on the market movements to make sure that there wasn't a significant rise which would wipe out the savings or the targets that the board would like to see. So we would start, if the board decided to proceed, it would be to put the financing team together, start documents and rating presentations and the like, and have that process ready to go to take advantage of whatever the market conditions are at the time all that is ready to go. It's very easy to slow down the process, to have everything pulled together, the team pulled together, the documentation pulled together, the rating pulled together, and have all that in place and have to slow it down because maybe the market moved and it's not meeting the target levels that the board or the district would like to see. And then start it back up if and when interest rates improved again. And again, the fees for any of this would be contingent on that actually moving forward and getting refinanced. And then I would be happy to answer any questions or open it up for discussion.
All right, Director Martin?
So if I'm understanding, if the district went with the first plan and the numbers didn't pan out when we got to June, the market changed, it went up 1%. We could just put a hold on it, no cost to the district whatsoever, put a hold on it, and we could wait to the third scenario.
Correct.
Is that correct?
That's correct. And if we waited to the third scenario, we would, if we had everything together in June and the market did move away from us, there would be some updating that would need to occur, in July of 17, if we wanted to wait for the 2-year period to come up, or just see where we were within that 2-year period to see what the interest rates were doing. So there would be updates, but you wouldn't be starting from scratch. You'd have the team pulled together and documents pretty well
But
taken
with
care
the
of.
updates, and I assume the updates come from the underwriter, the board counsel, the general counsel, the advisor, does that add up? Is it a higher amount of money we're gonna end up paying for it?
No, it's still a fixed fee. That would be part of what we help the district go out with, Tom, with the going out to the various providers of those services and getting costs, estimates, and those would be fixed, whether you waited or whether you waited right away.
So what's the downside from moving along with number 1 and ending up using 3? There is no downside to it.
Or using 2.
Or using
You did
2.
the same
Yeah.
thing with
Right, right.
So there is no downside to not starting it right away. There's no extra cost, I'm trying to figure out what the downside is to doing that.
If I can interject, I mean, it's just like Tom is saying, the downside is the interest rate risk, but if we're monitoring it, there's really no downside to getting it going right away and then waiting. The downside to saying, well, let's wait a year, is, boy, if those interest rates do go up beyond the cushions that Tom had identified for us, then we're not hitting the market, the target savings that we were looking for.
But I
So
think-
it's interest rate
I
risk.
think on that note, to say, I forget the lady's name, that's now the
Janet,
Janet. What she's indicating and showing is now through June, or maybe even June of next year, flat or very minor variation. So you're absolutely correct, there's no risk to us. We move forward, and if we have this ready in June and it looks good, we come to the board, and the board says pull the trigger.
But we could pull the trigger anytime.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
there's no lock-in, there's no
No,
extra
there's-
additional funding monies.
Nope.
Right, exactly.
There's not-
And
there's
and
not
the
too
other
much
thing that
downside.
the other thing that we would do, that we discussed with Tom, was that we could bring back on a monthly basis where we are in the process, where the market is, give the board an update, and as compared to what we're presenting tonight versus, when it is in April, or in June, or in May.
It's easy for us to do the analysis because we just asked Tom to do it. Boom, there it is.
Well, and I guess my question, I've been involved in quite a few CFD refinances. And I know a lot of times we just let it go on and then pull the trigger like a month before if the numbers were right, and if they weren't right, you just held off.
Yes, exactly, same type of thing. Yep, same type of thing.
Director Hernandez?
Yes, sir.
Can you give me some idea as to what events may happen that would change the interest, positive or negative?
Wow.
You're gonna earn your money, for goodness sake. I mean, anybody can just put this together.
Well, if you knew the answer.
Yeah, I wouldn't be presenting to you,
wouldn't
I'd
be
be doing
standing
something else.
Or
No,
maybe
where I'm going with this
Be in
is,
Tahiti.
this is the California bond market that we're
Correct.
talking about.
Right.
I'm wondering what the drought, if it continues to be bad and it goes into the worst of it, how does that impact our bond, the interest overall because of the economics that may be on a downside?
Well, it's a great question, and a kind of complex answer, actually. From the district standpoint, as long as you will be able to show what the reliability of your supply is, it really isn't going to impact your credit rating. So you would still be at a AA plus, or maybe we could bump that one up a little bit when we go to them. As long as you're showing the reliable supply coming on, and even part of the, the desal actually coming on in, October timeframe, I think it is, of that coming online, the reliability is probably a key issue. It's something that the rating agencies always ask about and wonder about, and particularly if the state allocation is continuing to be very low. I mean, it's 15% this year, it was 5% last year. So if we go into another, fourth year of a drought, that could go back down. So it's very critical as far as the storage capacity, the reservoir capacity that each and every agency has to rely on. So it's more of a reliability issue. The demand, however, is there for the municipal bond, for California bonds particularly. And although there's been not a lot of supply, so interest rates remain low. So when something does come to the market, there's plenty of demand there to be able to purchase the debt.
Where I was going with that was our reliability, I understood that part, but would there be a chance, staying at this low rate, and I saw the two buffers, 43 and 90 something, if the economic temperature of the state diminishes because of the drought, does that change plus or minus the bond rate percentage?
It could, but even in the last recession, where the state was really on a credit watch itself, from a regular municipal issuer, and particularly a water agency or a wastewater agency, where it's an essential service, it really doesn't impact what the state does.
That's the answer.
And just to, if I may interject too, the way that it's been advised to be structured too is very consistent with the positive points that we got from our rating agencies. We didn't extend the term of the debt, so we're not incurring new debt, we're not adding new money. These are the things that the rating agencies would have looked at negatively, but we were sure to structure this proposal so it's still favorable to the rating agencies.
And that's one of the things I was going to point out. We're not taking the 20-year house loan and now redoing it over 30 years to get the savings that way. We're not doing that.
Yeah.
And back to what Tom was saying, when we did the bond rating hearing in San Francisco before we issued these, Doug from Fitch, when he did our rating, the thing that really swayed towards the AA rating, and back then we insured up to a AAA, was the water authority goes through the 10-year shutdown. 10-day shutdown every year. And we talked about that recently. When we sized all of our storage, and that's why Twin Oaks is so big, is they're sized to provide 10 days of off-peak demands. So that's the policy that they looked at, and that was very strongly looked at in our bond rating, was the fact that we can go for that long of an emergency period in the county without losing an essential service. So that storage was one of the big reasons we got the bond rating, and that was why. But that was a long conversation in the bond hearing.
Director Martin and then Director
Is our
Ellis.
cost, and I deduced this probably incorrectly from one of your graphs, is our cost on this $275,000?
I'm sorry, Director Martin.
Yeah, the cost for the issue costs.
The cost for issuing this and doing all this is $275,000
That's an estimated range.
roughly?
235 to 250.
230.
Okay, and I read that because the first year savings weren't there, so I
Right.
assumed that was the first year savings goes to.
We actually
Well,
finance
and
it.
then plus, the short time period in which you're able to generate that savings
Yeah.
between now and July.
Director Ellis.
I don't know who could best answer this. Do we do a periodic trip to the rating agency, just like annually?
They do a periodic trip to us.
Oh, okay.
Like the paparazzi. you know.
Every 2 years. Or so. Those days are gone. The old days where we used to go to San Francisco. Now they just call us on the phone and they do what's called a surveillance. So our last surveillance from S&P was 2012. The last one from Fitch was 2013, and they maintained our rating. They reaffirmed our rating.
So we don't routinely make a trip to?
No, we don't. That's the old days. We don't do that anymore. No.
I heard we're just gonna tweet in the future.
Yeah.
Mike told me that.
I already have the answer.
Did you have a question?
So-
Director Personnel.
On page 7 on your in your current savings estimate slide, the 2.98% interest rate, is that fixed?
Yes, that's a fixed rate.
So
Well, it's a
All-in.
blended
All-in.
all-in rate, because each maturity, as you go out the 20 years, has a separate rate for each year. Rather than like your mortgage, you have a fixed rate for your whole 30 years or 20, whatever it is. But each maturity, because of the yield curve of the Treasury and the municipal market, each maturity has its own separate interest rate. So there's going to be a very low interest rate in the beginning years, and it'll gradually go up. The blended rate, let's call it, would be the 298 or close to 3%.
It's seamless for us as the issuer, it's not so seamless for the investor, but for us, it's the 2.9.
Flat rate, 2.9.
So, yeah, so it's fixed for us.
Yes.
So
Yes.
if some of the concerns that Director Hernandez mentioned, economic conditions change, the drought, major
No,
earthquake.
we're
doesn't
already
really
in.
impact
Once
us.
once you've done it,
Once you've
it's locked in, and
Okay.
it doesn't matter.
And just to kind of simplify this for myself and everybody else that may be watching this, it sounds to me, if I understand this correctly, that if we refinance this debt, we're gonna save roughly $4.5 million.
That's correct.
And there's very little risk,
Correct.
because we'd be locking into fixed rates, so regardless what happens out there, that we're still gonna benefit from that saving.
That's correct.
The least risk is if we, the longer we wait, there's a little bit of
The
risk
only
in
risk
interest
we
rate.
have is that we may not save as much if we wait longer.
Right.
And that's where I was gonna get in,
Correct.
go with, just a recommendation. I don't, this is kind of a no-brainer. I don't see why we wouldn't, take action on this tonight.
Well, isn't our recommendation to obtain proposals and contracts necessary to move forward with refunding?
Yeah, that's
Yes.
exactly what Director Snow just said, a motion and a second, we'd like to move forward.
So we'll move forward, and then they'll come to us when they feel it's the appropriate time. for us
We'll
to
we'll
pull the
update
trigger.
you as we go.
Monthly.
Update,
Yeah,
is that right?
probably almost every board meeting, probably, we'll give you an update.
A point of clarification too, would
Yeah.
this be something that the finance committee would be kind of looking and going through the process and then briefing the board, or?
That's up to the board. If
It's
the
up to the
board
board.
would want to throw it to the finance committee to get those updates, that would be wonderful too.
Maybe some
I
way.
prefer like it being in front of all of us myself.
That's
Yeah.
the consensus.
Give it to the finance committee, yeah, right. Come on.
Yeah,
So,
as you say, there's very little risk, we don't pay unless it happens, we monitor it. And just on a second note, there's a couple other agencies, the Water Authority being one of them, they're going through the same process right now. The A&F just approved that, I think, last month. It's the same thing as get it ready, have all the disclosures. Now, obviously, they're in the billions, totally different animal. But they're doing the same thing and having it ready and just telling their financial people, tell us when, and then pull the trigger.
And I think if I recall correctly, and Director Martin knows better than I do, but I think the city of San Marcos just went through this a couple weeks ago, or maybe a month ago.
Month ago.
Yeah.
Could have been.
Yeah, it was with their tax allocation docs.
Do we need a motion or just that direction?
A motion.
Made the
Motion.
Oh,
motion.
did you have a question?
I was gonna ask that, was that a motion, Director?
It was a
Snow?
motion,
It
yes.
was a
Second.
motion.
There's a second.
Okay. Need a motion is second, and those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes unanimously.
Great.
Thank you, that
Thank you
was
very much.
a very
Thank you very much.
excellent and
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
explanation, good job.
Nice presentation too.
Excellent.
Okay, item 3.3, drought update, it's on page 43 in our packet, and
Could you take a
Chris.
5-minute break?
Yeah, so you guys want to get a
Yeah, let me
second?
get the
do that,
PowerPoints,
a
yeah.
5-minute break.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.